The museum collection depicts the Illawarra pioneers' way of life. It portrays the way in which people lived and worked in pioneering times. The upstairs exhibition rooms are fitted out with furniture and other objects typical of the period 1870 to 1900. All artefacts on display were donated to the museum collection. The parlour was the family gathering room, the room for dining, playing musical instruments, relaxing by the fireplace, and reading. It was the main family meeting room, as there was little other household entertainment, and light would be by way of kerosene lamps. The Graham table was owned by the family that established the pioneer kerosene works at Mount Kembla in the 1860s. The table has a shale insert taken from the Graham mine. Interesting objects on the table from that period are the silver plate spoon warmer, 1910, the sugar container and shovel, the tilt teapot, the ornamental glass dome with the wax flowers inside, and the glass cruet set, 1885, which held vinegar, salt and pepper, and mustard. The red cedar chiffonier was owned by the Johnson family, who resided at 20 Harbour Street, Wollongong, and is dated around 1850. Pride of place on the chiffonier is the Staffordshire pottery cow. This type of pottery was renowned for its brightly coloured glazes. The rose glass lamps are a fine example of a decorative kerosene lamp donated by the McCarthy family and were from the early 1900s. There are another two of these lamps in the bedroom, objects typical of the period 1850s to 1900. A finely decorated porcelain cheese holder, also a porcelain soup tureen, a glass butter holder with a silver cover, a rattan chair, which was popular around 1900. The pedestal table in the foreground is circa 1880. It has a papier-mâché hand-decorated floral top with mother-of-pearl inlays. Above the fireplace is a magnificent red cedar mirror. This came from the family home of the Harrigans, top of Regent Street overlooking the centre of Wollongong. Their home eventually became the renowned Charcoal Tavern restaurant, and the Harrigan name became synonymous with the motor dealers, Harrigan Ford. The items near the fire hearth are a marble-topped foot warmer and a beadworked footstool. A significant item in the museum collection is the Waldron clock from the early 1800s, on display in the parlour. It is made from wood japonica with gold leaf gilt and was made in Cambridge, England. There are Indian dancers on the sides, and it has brass workings which are still functioning. The clock was owned by Captain Charles Waldron, late of the British 39th Regiment, who occupied the Spring Hill estate in 1833, just south of the centre of Wollongong. Much contention has been made over his death in 1834. What was the exact cause of his demise? Either a stroke or violent action by his two servant girls, Sarah McGregor and Mary Maloney. The museum received the clock in 1978 as a bequest of Captain Waldron's great-great-grandson. The bedrooms were always cluttered rooms because of the many pieces of furniture required. The furnishings are dated around 1900. The lady of the house is shown with a nightgown and a nightcap near her dressing table. A grand double iron bed with a canopy is seen. The canopy is for a decorative hanging or could be used to cover the bed with a mosquito net. The cedar cradle is reputed to have been used by the family of the Reverend Samuel Marsden. He is well known as the flogging parson for his rulings as the Parramatta magistrate. The chamber pots, usually porcelain of various shapes, were colloquially known in those days as gazundas. It goes under the bed. Also on the washstand is shaving equipment, a basin and a jug. Seen near the fireplace are the pottery bed warmers which contained hot water and were placed between the sheets. The metal bed warmer with handle used hot ashes to provide heat. It was slipped between the sheets and slid up and down the bed to warm it just before being used. Another interesting object is the rag mat. Householders, or their servants, would cut up rags into strips, and these were threaded through a hessian bag to make a mat. The hip bath would usually be placed in front of the fireplace. The hip bath was so called because only small children could completely lie in the bath. Adults sat in the bath with their feet on the floor outside the bath. Water was usually heated in the kitchen and carried upstairs in buckets. Also found in the bedroom of the late 1800s would be commode chairs and cedar dressers. There is another fine example of the McCarthy rose kerosene lamp on the dresser. This room portrays an early schoolroom with the necessary educational materials to impart knowledge. The well-used cane, apparently in use up to the 1960s. The slate and slate pencil were in use before lead pencils and books. Slates were later replaced by inkwells and wooden pens with brass nibs. A student could mark the slate with a slate pencil, slate on slate making a white mark, which could be rubbed off. And of course the well-used student desk, showing much wear and tear, with student carvings built up over many years. This room shows various children's toys over different eras. Our colonial kitchen is representative of a settler's kitchen, that is, a slab hut kitchen used by farm workers and other manual workers of the early days. There were no fuel stoves, so cooking was done over an open fire with a metal crane to support pots over the fire. Brooms on display were made of cabbage tree palms, and the ceiling was lined with whitewashed hessian, and the fly trap was a sticky strip hanging down. A dresser to hold plates is on display, and against the wall on shelves are various early kitchen implements. A couple of examples of meat safes are on display, including the well-known Coolgardie meat safe. It had water in a top tray, hessian in the water draped over the sides and into a bottom tray, so the water collected in the bottom tray as it dripped down the hessian. The breeze through the wet hessian provided cooling, a very important item in the days before ice boxes and refrigerators. There are many interesting items in the colonial kitchen. Ant traps under the dresser legs, wooden mouse trap without the spring, glass butter churns, kerosene tins cut and used as a kitchen sink, early apple peeler, a knife cleaner. The chairs in front of the fireplace came from the Hurry House, Vine Cottage, at Albion Park, and were made without nails, using wooden dowels. They're from the 1870s. We hope you have enjoyed this video tour of the upstairs rooms and the colonial kitchen of the Illawarra Historic Museum.